Chapter 2.
Now, the second problem is one which is not recognised as a disorder within the medical fraternity, but it's something which is gaining as far as being measured, is the level of homocysteine. And homocysteine is a good substance and it's a bad substance, like cholesterol. We need it, and at the same time we don't need it too high. So too little and too much are problems. And one of the major problem that it's associated with is a inhibition of the final part of making collagen. So collagen, as we know, is the glue that basically holds all our tissues together. And this is particularly in bones, it's in muscle tissue, it's in ligament tissue, and it's the most abundant protein in skin. Okay, so it's very common in the skin. So we start to see problems with collagen. When collagen starts to break down, we will usually find that there are high levels of homocysteine. Now we hear an increasing amount about what is a high level, what is a low level. For us, functionally, a high level is a level that changes a strong indicator muscle to weakness. So in other words, it's a stress to the system. The same as what we talked about with cholesterol. If cholesterol changes a strong muscle to weak, then it's too high. If oxidized cholesterol weakens a person, then it's too high. It's as simple as that. If homocysteine weakens a person, then it is too high. Okay? Now, homocysteine is synthesized from the amino acid methionine. So methionine is the essential amino acid, and we'll see it comes back and back when we look at genetics in the genetic code. But it's rich in meats, fish, eggs, cheese. So it's a protein, it's an amino acid, it builds protein. So the more protein, particularly animal proteins, the more methionine. Now methionine is converted or transferased to S-adenosylmethionine, otherwise known as SAM, or some people call it SAMe, S-A-M with a little e. So S-adenosylmethionine. So whenever we reference SAM, it means S-adenosylmethionine. And S-adenosylmethionine is otherwise known as active or activated methionine, and it is a coenzyme. SAM is a coenzyme. In other words, it's part of the equations which require coenzymes, and its function is to produce or donate CH3s. So CH3 is known as a methyl group. Okay? So it is the universal methyl donor. So its function is to produce methyls. Now we use methyl groups, as we'll see, in a number of biochemical pathways, but the major one, and this is undoubtedly the major one, is to keep the cap on the gene. So if you've got a bad gene that you've inherited, as we'll see, it could be an oncogene. In other words, there could be a cancer gene within the family. You've gone 50 years and you haven't had a problem. Okay? Why haven't you had a problem? Because that gene hasn't been exposed. So you don't want that gene to be exposed, because when that is exposed, it can then start to be expressed. So if you like, the cap to keep that locked in and not expressed is a methyl group, okay, a CH3. So you can begin to see, well, if you are deficient in methyl donors, like SAM, you could allow genes to express themselves in a way that you don't want to. So once it's lost the CH3 here, so the adenosyl part, the conversion of methionine to S-adenosyl, the adenosyl part comes from adenosyl triphosphate, or energy, ATP. Okay? And to make ATP, we know the most important thing is magnesium. So magnesium is often an element here. So S-adenosyl methionine then loses the CH3, the methyl group, and converts to S-adenosyl homocysteine. Okay? This then is converted, or with the addition of H2O, to homocysteine. Okay? Now homocysteine is an intermediate substance. It doesn't have a biological function as an amino acid, but it's the intermediate substance on making the amino acid cysteine, which is very, very important because it contains sulfur. It's one of the major detoxifiers in the body. So cysteine is an amino acid, builds proteins, and helps us to detoxify. So homocysteine is first of all transferased to cystathione and then to cysteine. And this conversion of homocysteine to cystathione is pyridoxal 5-phosphate dependent, or B6, and vitamin C. okay, P5P or active B6 and vitamin C. This one here is pyridoxal 5-phosphate dependent also. So you can see to get rid of or metabolize homocysteine, you need B6 or the activated form pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Okay? This is almost one of the biggest uses of pyridoxal 5-phosphate in the body. Okay? So if you find somebody that shows up that they need B6 or pyridoxal 5-phosphate, simply challenge them for homocysteine. Okay, and you will usually find that that person will weaken to homocysteine because they need B6. All right. Now, when I find a patient shows to a substance, I like to test my knowledge and use that substance in as many biochemical pathways that I can. So B6 deficiency is very common. In teenage time, we need a lot of B6 to get our hormones to kick in, and probably some of you develop mouth ulcers. Yeah? No. So if you develop mouth ulcers, this is a sign of B6 deficiency. So always ulcerations in the mouth is a sign of B6. Now, when you look at the gums, often the gums will bleed. If you've got bleeding gums when you clean them, etc., this is a high level, usually a high level of homocysteine occurring here, which is breaking the collagen in the gums. So bleeding gums tends to be weakening of the collagen of the blood vessels, high homocysteine, again need for B6 when you see bleeding gums. Okay. Now, I've often talked about other ulcerations like stomach ulcers and duodenal ulcers. You don't come across those so much now. You know, they don't seem to get into our area. Whether there's less ulcerations going on in the stomach or not, I don't know. Whether people go and take the triple antibiotic therapy for things, I don't know. But I've come across recently two very, very difficult abdominal problems with what appeared to be parasites. And in fact, we've treated them for parasites, and the parasites are cleared up, but they've still got the abdominal problems. Still got a lot of pain, all the sort of symptoms as if they've got abdominal. Diarrhea, sometimes blood in there, etc. And then I've gone through the protocol, which I'm going to show you this afternoon. And they're shown to be B6 or pyridoxal 5-phosphate deficient. And I thought, why didn't I realize this before? Of course, they've got an ulcer down in the colon. It used to be called ulcerative colitis, isn't it? And literally, when they have a look up at ulcerative colitis, it is covered in ulcers. And that is B6 deficiency, all right? So don't, you know, we miss it. And it didn't dawn on me for a long, long time that, of course, ulcerative colitis is called ulcerative colitis because it's got ulcers in the colon, okay? And you can imagine ulcers in your colon, A, the pain, and B, you know, what happens is your feces just goes straight through. So these people often have resections done. You know, if they're severe, they often have parts of their colon or a whole lot removed. And maybe all it is a deficiency of B6. So an ulcer is a tissue that can't recover, because one of the major roles of B6 is transamination of proteins in order to breaking down into the amino acids to rebuild again. So they're unable to repair their tissues. If you can keep questions to the end, okay, because of the filming. So we've got homocysteine here, B6 dependent. Now, this person who's B6 deficient will get a higher level because the substrate will build up, and then that gets shunted in, eventually inhibiting the production of collagen. So they may present with collagen problems. They could have anything from a bad back to floppy skin to a cerebral vascular accident. Okay? Now these people, as you'll see, are the red people. Okay? Okay? Now we don't mean to keep on and on about the red people, but this happens to be cardiovascular. As you'll say, even if you've got a touch of red, you know, you might be blue, but one eye is red. You still got, therefore, the tendency to have this problem. So high homocysteine is a popular symptom or finding of red people. Now, this means you need B6, pyridoxal 5-phosphate, to get rid of it. This is the normal pathway to getting rid of homocysteine or metabolizing it through. Now, we use another interesting pathway for B6 that I find is positive in every case, is the conversion of glycogen back into glucose. So the conversion of glycogen stored in the muscle and the liver back into glucose is B6 dependent, or more accurately pyridoxal 5-phosphate dependent. So these people get tired quite quickly after eating. So they eat, they feel all right, their blood sugar level's okay, the insulin kicks in, transfers any excess sugar maybe into fat if they've got excess there, but they can't mobilize glycogen. Glycogen is the second store after blood glucose to supply then the energy for producing ATP. So if you like, they're locked in, and sometimes they gain weight, and sometimes they gain a lot of weight during the day, which sort of disappears by the next day. So their glycogen levels in the muscle is high, and the glycogen level in the liver is high, and they weaken to glycogen. Okay? So again, it's just a thought process that if a person shows to B6 or pyridoxal 5-phosphate, test them with glycogen as well, and you'll find they maybe when they're exercising aerobically, it's after 4 minutes of exercise that your blood sugar level, your blood glucose drops down, and you need to start burning liver glycogen and then muscle glycogen. Okay? So it's quite quick. When they exercise, they get tired very quickly. Okay? But in normal, what we're doing now, it may be an hour after breakfast because you're not working aerobically. So you're working very slowly. So an hour, maybe a little longer than that. Whoom, suddenly they drop down. The energy goes down because what are they going to do? If they've got no glycogen stores, they've got to actually start to burn fat or amino acids as their source of energy to produce ATP. So these people have big dips, late morning and sort of mid-afternoon, 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I'll be looking out for that from this end, for those who are sort of collapsing after lunch. In about an hour after lunch, you know, you'll be dead. You'll suddenly go down like that and you'll say, what the hell have I eaten? And it's usually wheat, isn't it, that does it. It's what Clive was going to suggest, we all order sandwiches for lunch, which is fine, but not for the Reds, okay? Now, what is, or was in the textbooks, the biggest natural source of B6 is wheat, okay? But is it the biggest source now? No, okay? In fact, it's depleted in B6, and when you actually eat wheat, you know, you don't get any B6 at all. It probably drains you more because you're not producing enough stomach acid to help the digestion of wheat. So there's the link you see back, again, red people, B6 and wheat. High homocysteine, higher risk to all cardiovascular collagen problems. So this is our red person. So now you begin to think, well, red people, what was it Chris said? They need B12 for getting their oxygenation up. We talked about possibly a little bit of B3, a little bit of copper and so on in there. Okay, we're building a profile up now, aren't we, of a red person. But most important is B6 or pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So you've got to chuck that into the equation as well. And vitamin C. Now, most people I've tested recently, over the last few months, who are red, don't need vitamin C. Okay? But some do. Okay? And the reason I put it in there is because some people need to take extra vitamin C in the wintertime. Most of them have got enough vitamin C at the moment from fruits and vegetables, particularly raw fruits and vegetables, which are still relatively fresh. Okay? Come next month, they won't be so fresh. They'll be starting to import, and when you import fruit and veggies, it's picked raw or much less ripe, and directly you pick an orange off the tree, no more vitamin C grows on it. Okay, it develops and is synthesized. If you leave an orange on the tree and you shake that tree, which is what I love to do if I go to the Mediterranean, is to shake an orange tree and take the orange that falls off and juice that or eat that, and it's fantastic, isn't it? That's where vitamin C is. Vitamin C is not in a green orange which has traveled for 4 weeks across the oceans to get to us. The amount of vitamin C in an orange is so small. You've got to drink a lot of them. So at this time of the year, if you incorporate fresh fruits into your diet, you'll get enough vitamin C. But maybe next month, more people will start to show that they do need a little bit of extra vitamin C. And this is going to be your people who weaken to the red. Okay? So at the moment, you won't find many people need the vitamin C, but you will find them a little bit later on, I'm sure, in the wintertime. Now, why has evolution, let's call it, created these in-between compounds instead of just changing methionine straight to cysteine or obtaining cysteine from our food? There's a very, very important reason. And that very, very important reason is this, is methylation. So this pathway is called the methylation pathway. Okay? Now, if you were to only use methionine down here to homocysteine to cysteine, you would produce 1 molecule CH3 for 1 molecule of methionine. Okay? But we've been given the chance to recycle homocysteine, so you can recycle homocysteine back to methionine. And the only difference between homocysteine and methionine is the fact that it's got a methyl donor missing. So it needs to be remethylated, and hey presto, it becomes methionine again. So that remethylation is called methionine synthase enzyme, okay? MS on the top here. And this enzyme is vitamin B2 dependent. Vitamin B2, or riboflavin. Okay? And this, you'll see, is the only person, as I told you about who they are in a moment, who needs vitamin B2 as an extra. Now, to remethylate the actual methyl group is donated here by methyl cobalamin, which is the active coenzyme of vitamin B12. Okay? So we have 2 active coenzymes of B12, adenylyl and methyl. And this is methyl cobalamin. So methyl cobalamin gives its methyl group to homocysteine to recycle it. Okay? Now, where does methyl cobalamin get its methyl group from? It gets it from methyl tetrahydrofolate. Okay? You love that name, methyl tetrahydrofolate. Okay? You know, a CH3 tetrahydrofolate. So it's an active coenzyme of folic acid. Okay? So now this person needs B12, B2, and folic acid. Where does tetrahydrofolate get its methyl group from? It obviously gets it from folic acid, but it also gets it from a number of amino acids like glycine, etc., which needs P5P. So it's our friend P5P again. So this person needs a little bit of P5P or B6, folate, and B12 to recycle. So why would you want to do that? The answer is to continue to make methyl groups. Okay? So who is it who needs methyl groups? It's cancer cases. All cancer cases, remember, if that oncogene is exposed, in other words, the caps come off, they need to make a lot more methyl groups. So it's really, really important, obviously, for people who've got a possibility down that way, epigenetically, to maintain their high levels of S-adenosylmethionine, in other words, to have the methyl donors. And these are our blue people. Blue people who weaken to blue are usually the ones, or always the ones who get cancer, are the blue people. But it does not mean that blue people will get cancer. Okay? But whenever I've tested over years, cancer people who've had it or got it, they weaken to blue. Okay? Either in both eyes or one eye. Okay? So the blue biological type just indicates that they've got certain enzymes within their body which don't function as well as other ones. Okay? In the same way that the red one doesn't. The red one has problems here. The expression of cystathione transferase in a red person is decreased. So in order to get that level of this enzyme up higher to working better, which we'll look at in a minute with genetics, we need more B6. Okay? Or that's the red person. But the blue person needs homocysteine. They love homocysteine. Okay? They can't get enough of it so that they can recycle and make more methyl donors. So the blue person strengthens to homocysteine. So you see now, homocysteine is a good guy and a bad guy. Okay? If it's too high, it's bad. If it's too low, it's bad. If it's too low, it means you're probably in need of making more methylation. So the blue person needs B12s, folates, and B6 in order to recycle. Okay? Begin to see the picture now. So biologically, when you actually examine a patient and you find they're red or they're blue, you think, that's interesting, they show up to B12. I wonder why. And now you're beginning to learn why it is that these people need very specific nutrients for their biological type. Now, there is an alternative way of making more methyl groups, and this comes from the amino acid, from the vitamin B called choline, but this only occurs in the liver pathway. It's an alternative route of making methyl donors. But we want to concentrate on this one, because this is the one really that matters as far as the different constitutional types, which you're going to meet every day in your practice, because everybody is one of those biological differences. The variation, as we said before, of the human genome, of the human DNA patterns, is only 10%. So the difference between you and me is less than 10%. Okay? And of that 10% variation, 1/3 we will call one body type, 1/3 another, and 1/3 another. And we tie those body types in with the colours that they weaken to, the red, green, and blue. So the difference between a red and a green is actually quite small. But you need slightly different things within your system than I do. And it means that certain enzymes, and I know he's red, are going to be less active, or the allele that he's got genetically will be less active than mine. Okay? I will have a very active one of these. Okay? You will have a less active one. You haven't got it disappeared. You know, if you had a complete mutation in there and you couldn't express that at all, you'd be dead very quickly. Okay? So when we talk about genes being inhibited or enzymes being inhibited, they're inhibited, they're not stopped. Okay? They just don't function as well. And we can upregulate those by increasing the amount of the active coenzymes. Now, another one which is interesting in some ways, which is gaining some interest, is called asymmetrical dimethylarginine. Is an endogenous inhibitor of nitric oxide synthase enzymes. Now, nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It's a natural substance, very simple, NO. It's a natural dilator of blood vessels. It has other functions within the immune system as well, but this ADMA is an inhibitor of nitric oxide. In other words, it doesn't allow the blood vessels to open up in the way they should. Elevation has been proven to be a novel independent risk factor for endothelial dysfunction and coronary heart disease. So again, like homocysteine, it may be an independent marker that there's something that's wrong. Markedly high levels have been detected in hypercholesterolemia, as well as congenital heart disease, hypertension and renal failure. On autopsy, studies of atherosclerotic carotid arteries, the thickness of the intima and the media have been found to be strongly related to high levels of ADMA. Tissue accumulation is considered a causative factor in multiple organ failure, probably because of the arteriosclerosis. So natural remedies for reducing this have been found to be vitamin A. Now, I don't find many people respond to vitamin A or test up for vitamin A. I was actually asked by a patient during the week whether I could give her some vitamin A, and I said, well, sorry, I don't, I don't have any, but we were thinking about doing it as a liquid a little bit later on when the winter comes in, because we used to use A, or A was used as a build-up, from fish liver oil capsules to help people with their immune system. So it has a role there. And I said, well, why do you want it? And she said it's for my horse. So I said, oh, that's interesting. It's for your horse. Why? She said, the fur is very dry and scaly. And we used to give the horse cod liver oil. And this is what you used to give to dogs, wasn't it? Dogs have dry fur. You give them a spoonful of cod liver oil. The problem is now you're actually giving them a spoonful of dioxin, of mercury, and all sorts of other things. So you wouldn't really give anybody cod liver oil, I wouldn't have thought at the moment. I said, well, you could give the horse, some omega-3. And she said, no, it doesn't test to that. It tests to the vitamin A that it needs in the cod liver oil. And only cod liver oil makes the fur better. Okay? So just think about that. When your dog gets a bit mangy, and dry skin, maybe when you get dandruff and things, a spoonful of cod liver oil used to sort the dog out, but it may now not be the omega-3, the oils, but it may actually prove to be the vitamin A and possibly even the vitamin D, but certainly the possibility of the vitamin A. So I can't remember the last time I prescribed vitamin A, so now we need to give this patient some for her horse. Okay? And when you think about it, vitamin A we get from dairy products, don't we? And fish oils. Those are the major sources of vitamin A. Of course, horses don't eat those. And she said, well, another thing, Chris, and I'm always learning, I've got a brain that loves to learn. She said they can't convert beta-carotene into vitamin A. It's a genetic defect in horses. I don't know whether the same applies with dogs, but it's very interesting, that, isn't it? So I said, well, horses love carrots, don't they? Which is a good source, which they are unable to convert beta-carotene into vitamin A like human beings. Magnesium has been shown to reduce ADMA. Pyridoxal 5-phosphate And again, here's a P5P, very important pathway here for the activation of dimethylarginine, dimethylamine hydrolase, in other words, the enzyme that breaks and inactivates ADMA. So again, probably we will be looking, red person, they definitely need pyridoxal 5-phosphate or B6. So this is another reason why, and also magnesium. So B12 cobalamin, in other words, hydroxycobalamin, but not the activated form, may stimulate the demethylation as an alternative pathway. So in other words, the grabbing of the methyl group from ADMA to make methyl cobalamin could be one route. But I think the amount of B12 that you would need would be so high, it doesn't make sense that to administer high doses of B12 to a person to lower it down. Okay, so homocysteine and ADMA are sort of more findings that you might find en route with patients who've been diagnosed with coronary or cardiovascular problems.
End of chapter 2.